sports media team member Ryan De Silva, but most known as Lewis from the HabAListen podcast. What's going on?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I am good. How are you? Before we start talking about all this draft stuff, I just want to say that I am honored to be briefly mentioned on your podcast.
Yeah, no, of course, man. It's a pleasure, and I support all Habs podcasts and just any podcast in general. I mean, it's always nice to spread positivity and spread the good word, so I'm with it.
Yeah, so I think a good place to start is talk about players who have expressed interest to play for Montreal. And there have been many players like Andrei Svechnikov wanting to play with or against fellow Russians Alex Galchenyuk and Nikita Sherbak, and also Jesperi Kotkaniemi wanting to play for the Habs. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I know, like, right now the big talk of the town is Jesperi Kotkaniemi, right? He's the guy that everybody's talking about right now. And he's been flying up the rankings, really. I mean, last year, nobody even knew about him, right? But he's had a good year. He's starting to show his skill. I mean, he has good size. He skates well. He's young, and he's a center, right? He checks all the boxes for the Habs,
Yeah.
right? So, but I think the one thing that raises flags for me is drafting for need over drafting the best player available. And this is something Montreal has done in the past, and it didn't work out. Like, the Michael McCarrons, Jared Tenordis of the world. That's when they needed to bulk up. We were just too small. You remember our reputation back then? We were so small.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The Habs are too small. The Habs are too small, right? And then we decided to bulk up, and look what happened. The league changed to a smaller, faster league. And I think that you have to be careful when you draft for need. So, but, I mean, there's a lot of good things being said about Kotkaniemi. But in my opinion, you got to draft the best player available. And I think that's Zadina. I truly do. And, even to tell you the truth, I would even take one of the D-men, Boquist, Bouchard, Dobson, Hughes, any one of those before I would take Kotkaniemi in this draft.
Yeah,
and we have a need for defense too, right? And the thing is, though, one thing with Kotkaniemi is he's young. He's playing pro hockey right now. So that's one thing to consider, right? He has a solid two-way game, and he's being compared to Kopitar. I think that in itself is what makes it very appealing. Of course, we would want a Kopitar on our team. But I think the Habs need goals, and you don't pass up on a young sniper, especially where the NHL is going nowadays with a high-scoring speed game. I mean, what I would do is draft the stud winger, trade the 30-goal-scoring winger who we can't afford to re-sign, trade that guy for a center. And I think we have other chips as well, 4 second-round picks. We have some young wingers on the team. There is some other chips. And Mark Bergevin in this draft, he's not in a position to take risks. I think even if he goes slightly off the board, this could be the end of him, especially if the Habs have another terrible season. I think it's going to be hard to sell to the fans that we drafted for the future when you potentially had a player who could impact your lineup next season.
Yeah, that's true. It's good. It's kind of funny that you bring that up because in Trevor Timmons' interview, he said that when you draft players, it's not a sprint but a marathon.
Yeah.
But with Filip Zadina, he has the potential to start in whatever team he plays for next season. And Kotkaniemi, I don't know much about him, but I don't think he'll go all the way to the team that drafted him. I think he'd do a few more years of conditioning in Finland, to be honest. But yeah, you're right. You can't pass up on Filip Zadina.
And I think if the Habs were headed in a direction that was more of a rebuild, like if they came out and said, we're rebuilding this thing, then it would make sense to go for the young centerman. But I think this is more of a retool. And when you have an opportunity to add a young stud winger, I mean, just do it. Don't let it pass.
And we are picking at number 3. We're not picking at number 8. If we were at
Exactly.
number 8, I'd pick Kokeniemi, but we're at number 3. And at that position, I'd want to choose the best player available. It hasn't worked out in the past for Montreal, and Kokeniemi, he has a lot of potential to be a really good player, but I think we're more in the direction of a retool than a redraft, to
Yeah,
be
and they
honest.
made that very clear. So I think that Kotkaniemi would be more of a rebuild. Yeah, you take him. But I mean, I'm not against trading down and getting something for that pick and picking up Kotkaniemi. I mean, that's something that's in their toolbox. They can use that. But if we're keeping that pick, I think there's a lot better options.
That's true. There has been, in fact, some rumors that the Coyotes and Habs discussing that they'd swap their third and fifth pick. So maybe then, if Montreal does somehow trade for that to get to the fifth pick, they do draft Kokeniemi. But I don't know. There's a lot of crazy things happening in this year's draft.
Yeah, and right now this is where the crazy rumors are going to start flowing. I think that you're going to on Twitter you're going to find about 5 to 10 a day of just crazy rumors.
Yeah.
So and then also you mentioned Svechnikov, right?
Yes.
And he was saying that he wanted to play with Galchenyuk and Sherbak. Now, picture this. Imagine Svechnikov, Galchenyuk, and Sherbak all on one line.
Oh, the Russian trio.
Yeah, I'd pay to see that, I think in the end, I think it's normal for these young guys to want to play against their countrymen, but I'd say mostly play with their countrymen, right? It's always nice to have people to communicate and train with. So there's no surprise there. I mean, you see usually when the Russian guys are on the team, they're always hanging out together outside. You see them taking pictures on Instagram.
Yeah.
But I mean, just because they have the same background doesn't mean they're going to have instant chemistry, right?
Yeah, that's true. But there is a slight possibility that Svechnikov could be in a Habs jersey because the owner, Don Waddle, he was mentioning that the chemistry with Zadina and last year's first round pick of the Carolina Hurricanes, Martin Necas, and they're two Czech natives and they have great chemistry. And they're like, I don't know the full interview, but it's from that. It seemed like Waddle was definitely contemplating on whether to draft Zadina.
Yeah. I mean, listen, no doubt. If he's available at 3, it's a no-brainer in my mind to draft him. If Svechnikov drops to us, I mean, this kid is built like a brick house. I mean, he scored top 10 in I think 3 or 4 different drills at the combine. Did you see that the combine there? And I mean, he had a better showing, I think, more than anybody in the top 3, really.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
Right, and I mean, I know that's not saying much. A lot of guys who scored high probably won't even be drafted in the first round, right? But I think the on-ice product mixed with his physique is definitely something to look forward to. I mean, the reality is, I still don't think that Carolina's going to let them slip by. I don't think they will. But if they're asleep at the wheel and they decide that they're going to go with Zadina because of that chemistry and stuff, I think, we grab him. Why not, right?
Yeah, it's true. I honestly, I don't think that would happen. I think Montreal would pick Zadina all day, every day. But I want to transition to more of Trevor Timmins and talking about how he was talking about the importance of the psychological side of the game. What do you think about those type of comments?
Yeah, I think that, okay, first of all, I'm going to start with my girlfriend. Okay, she's 1 year away from getting her doctorate in clinical psychology. So from a personal experience, I can tell you how important psychology is, okay? And she told me to say that, but, nonetheless, it's still a very important tool.
Yeah.
And I think, it's still to this day, people don't take psychology that serious. It's odd it's odd, but I don't think people realize the importance of a structured lifestyle and a stable mind. And I think picking up on early patterns and bad behaviors, it can definitely project the outcome of an individual. Now, I mean, it's not the be all end all, but I think it's
Oh, yeah.
definitely an important tool, you know, because I think this is a great program to implement. And to be honest, I look forward to seeing like the future results because I believe that this could help not only identify the players who you think are suited for a certain organization, but I think it could also help coaches guide their players down a better path if they have any early signs of like irregular behaviors, you know? So I think this day and age though, with all the tools at our disposal, you need to take advantage of it, all of it, you know, whether it's analytics, sports science, psychology, all of these tools can only help identify problems. And I think it's going to help guide the athletes of the future. So I'm a big fan of that. And I'm really happy that he implemented that. And that's not just because my girlfriend is going to be a psychologist, believe me. Okay. I'm not being biased. I really support it. How do you feel about that?
I mean, yeah, I 100% agree with you. How the psychology side of the game, many don't view it as important, but really it is important because think about it just in your normal everyday job. If you don't have the confidence to do that day to day, you won't be able to do it. It's the same with hockey. With hockey and any other normal job, there's the same. It's kind of the same in terms of a pressure situation. If you can't perform, then
Yeah.
it just won't help. And I think by doing like the personality and behavioral assessments, I think it could help a player down the road with dealing with those problems.
Yeah, and I mean, like any psychologist will tell you, and anybody really will tell you, if you can find it early, like if you can find anything early, you can help. First of all, you can identify if this is the right person for the organization. But second of all, I mean, if it's not, I mean, this can help if they score poorly or whatever it is. It could help them in their future endeavors. You know, help them change, help them fix those things in their life. So I'm definitely a big fan of it.
And I think it was quite funny that Trevor Timmons used an example of Alice Hemsky in his draft year when he was sitting. He was slouched, didn't look like an athlete. He wasn't professional. On his survey or something like that, I forgot. He said that he liked playing video games all day. But now you see him back in his prime, he was really good. He got a lot of assists and he was a very good playmaker. So I think it's good with such assessments. I wouldn't say like, you could see where they're at maturity wise and taking care of their body for the big game.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I said, it's not the be all end all. I mean, sometimes a kid could be lazy outside of the rink, but when he shows up to the rink, he's a beast, right? I mean, I think there's certain things you got to look for. I don't think video games is the type of red flag that people are really going to look at. I'm sure there's other things, right? I mean, attitude issues, you know, Mark Bergevin, you know him and his attitude, right? I mean, but there's definitely certain signs that you can pick up on, and I mean that's why they get paid the big bucks. Those psychologists, they know. It's crazy. It's really crazy how much they can project by just sitting down and talking to you.
That's true. They're really crazy. I think I'd like to transition on some of the combines that the Canadians are hosting. And especially with the one in Stockholm, Sweden, how they're inviting European prospects. Personally, I think that it's really good because those European prospects did not travel to the NHL Combine, and they could assess those players in their own country to see if they're good enough for to be drafted or to be signed later on.
Yeah, well, I think they should have brought them to Montreal. Why not? It's the best city in the world. I love Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I understand why they did it. And you know what? Why not? I've always loved the way that the Swedes play the game. I really have.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always big, strong, skilled. And the main thing is respectful. You know, I think Hockey Sweden has done a great job in developing these young men and teaching them discipline and respect. I think that's a big reason why their players have had success at the highest level. Now, I mean, you could look at the list of great players out of Sweden, And you could just look at their success in the World Juniors over the years. And you know what? Don't even look far. Look at this year's projected number one pick, Rasmus Dahlin. The kid is the complete package. And actually, Rick Stevens, who is the editor-in-chief and founder of All Habs and Rocket Sports Media, I've spoke to him in some of my earlier podcasts, and he actually had a chance to talk to the young man, I believe a year ago. And he was pleasantly surprised with his demeanor, his confidence, his ability to communicate, his maturity. He said, a lot of great things about him. And I think a lot of credit has to be given to Hockey Sweden in the way that they coach these players. So, I mean, I'm all for this camp. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe we find the next Matt Sundin or Sedin twins. Throw in a Nick Lidstrom or something, right?
I mean, you really have to hope for that.
Yeah. And I think if we find one of those guys, it could be overall success.
It's good to find and scout from places far and wide because you never know. We could find that Matt Sundin or Nicholas Lindstrom. Yeah. And I think another thing that they're hosting is in Montreal, and they invited 28 players who did not attend the one in the NHL Combine, and 13 of are QMJHL players. So in that one, they're going more local.
Yeah, and you know what? Hey, this is for all the haters out there because you see so many people comment, why aren't they looking at kids in the queue? Why do they not sign all these? Every French kid from the queue that gets signed, they're like, why wasn't Montreal in on this? I mean, this is definitely for the haters. Take a look at that. But I think, I love the fact that they are having another camp in Montreal, inviting a few kids from the queue. And, you heard it in the interview. Trevor Timmons said it, he wants to leave no stone unturned, right? 4 second-round picks, right? 4 second-round picks is very valuable. It's a very valuable asset. And I think if you're gonna decide to keep those picks and draft all those players, you need to make sure you're choosing the right ones. So, to tell you the truth, I'm excited just talking about it. And I think that every Hab fan should be excited. 4 second-round picks, man, that's huge, right? Literally, this is a chance to restock the cupboards. This draft, is like the equivalent to a trip to Costco. Like you're going to Costco and you're filling up the cupboards. That's what this draft could potentially be. So it's exciting. And I mean, these camps, you could tell that they're really putting in the effort, taking the time. They know how important this draft is. And with the changes made to management so far and the coaching staff, and I mean, this is all from pressure from a bad season and fans and media. I think that they really know that they need to step it up, and I think that this is a good sign.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking about the QMJHL players, do you remember when sometime in February the Tampa Bay Lightning signed Alex Barré-Boulet?
Yes, I do. Yeah, that's when Twitter went crazy and said, "What the heck? Why didn't you sign him?"
And I remember the Journal de Montréal, they had a front page saying that Montreal, they do not sign French Canadian. And I kind of sighed because you can't sign every single one. And a month ago, Montreal Canadiens signed Alexandre Alain, who plays on the same team as Alex Barré-Boulet and was clutch during the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to make is that the Journal de Montréal, they didn't say anything about Alexandre Alain. So I think the fact that people are saying that the Montreal Canadiens don't draft Quebec players it's a really stupid argument because clearly from that, how half of that combine is mainly Quebec, and the rookie camps, a lot of those players are from the QMJHL.
Yeah.
So I think that combine with inviting the 13 QMJHL players, I think they're kind of showing that no, we love French players just as much as any other players.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of thing kind of a narrative that the Canadians don't draft and scout French players is kind of stupid.
No, it is. And to tell you the truth, anybody who knows anything knows that that's not the case. But people the media, especially this year, I find, or especially ever since PK Subban has been traded, they just like, if the team is not successful, they're just finding something to write about because you can't write about wins. So they find some sort of controversy to write about. And actually, if you looked at the numbers, I know this was something that surfaced back then, was the numbers were low on players getting drafted from the QMJHL. It's not just the Montreal Canadiens; it's the whole league.
It's the whole league,
right? Yeah, like last year, I don't know how many. I think only like 3 players or something got drafted from the Q. So, I mean, it's not just the Montreal Canadiens. If you're going to report something like that, report the facts, because it's not just us who's not drafting from the Q. It's other organizations, the whole NHL, right? So, I mean, it's very easy for them to point at us after a signing is made, and this is like an unproven guy, hasn't done anything. But really, I mean, it's been a common trend. But I think that trend is starting to change. I think that the talent in the Q is starting to rise up. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more players coming out of there.
Yeah, especially in this draft with Joe Veleno. But I think like these players that are being signed, like Alain and Barré-Boulet, they're not surefire NHL players. They have a chance to be NHL players, but they're not a sure thing to like go into the NHL in a couple of years and rip 40 goals. That's just not realistic. But I think when the Canadians are losing, a lot of people resort to the worst. But I think you just need to calm down, and there's always going to be the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, that's one reason why I started my podcast, right? HabAListen. Shameless plug here. Shameless plug. HabAListen, the podcast. But, yeah, I mean, that's why I just felt like there was too much negativity out there from the media and from, the Journal de Montreal and just everybody. When the team is doing bad, it doesn't have to be those two extremes. It doesn't have to be when the team is winning, we love them, and when they're not winning, we hate them. There's always the middle ground, and I feel like that's something that we need to find.
Yeah, that's true. There's a difference between straight out negativity and constructive criticism. Negativity is usually unrealistic, like saying Shea Weber's bad, he's old, he has an injury history, and constructive criticism is actually talking about the real problems that the Canadians have, like at the center position, how Max Pacioretty's lack of scoring goals. You just have to act professional.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, the bottom line is this last season is on Marc Bergevin. He had a terrible summer. That's definitely his fault, but it doesn't mean we have to bury him. We can give him a chance, and I think that. I think he's earned that much. And a lot of people too, another thing that they talk about is like, the young team that he inherited. Look at the roster. Go back and look at the roster that he inherited and look at the prospect pool that he had. Please don't tell me that he had a winning team. He did not.
No, he did not. He had Nathan Beaulieu, Jared Tenorti.
Just go look at the Hamilton Bulldog team too that year. I mean, it was terrible.
It was quite awful. And
Aaron Palushis and all these, like, man, it was crazy.
Gabriel Dumont, Eric Cole, those type of players. Ooh, no, not good at all. But Marc Bergevin, yeah, he's been doing. He started off well, and he's been going downhill lately. And this year, it may be a make or break for him. But he has a lot of ammunition at the draft. He has a lot of cap space, so a lot of good things could happen quite potentially.
Yeah, and I mean the problem too with Marc Bergevin has always been that I don't think that he communicates well to the fans and to the media. I don't think he does. And I feel like the language issue, I've said it before. I think that his English communication, I don't think it's as good. And he's just like a very old school. He's like an old school parent,
Oh yeah.
He's not like, I don't know. He just feels like really old school, but I think that he's surrounded with a good enough team, and I think he can right the ship.
Yeah, it's true, and it's when you said that, I thought about transparency because at the end of the off season, there's been a lot of promises about transparency and making sure that everyone's in the know as to what's happening instead of us always second guessing whatever they're saying. Like for example, the Carey Price injury, how it started off as he'd be off for 4 to 6 weeks,
Yeah.
and then he was out for the whole year. And then again, when Carey Price was injured again early last November, it was day to day, and then it turned to 4 weeks. And he didn't really have a good season, and that was attributed to that injury. But I guess the point is that the Canadians are making an effort to be more or to have more transparency with the fans and everyone who wants to be in the loop.
Yeah, and it sucks that a bad season like this is what, turned the page on this and actually made them realize that they should be more transparent. But I feel like, I think they're making good steps in that. I think they're starting to share more information. I always hated that injury hiding, but at the same time, sometimes you need to protect your players. I get it. So sometimes you can't, tell the exact extent of the injury, but still, I mean, at that point, you're just playing with fans, right? When you're saying he'll be back, and then he's out for the season. I mean, it's not right. And another thing too is I do enjoy the Montreal Canadiens Twitter. I think that they're making a great effort in being more active and more social compared to the robot that used to handle it. I think that like I said, you look around the organization. As a Habs fan, you got to be happy with the changes that are being made. But at the end of the day, I know nothing matters until the real roster changes are made. But still, this is a good sign.
That's true. A lot of good signs, but I think a lot of people are going to dictate if those good signs are really true, if depending on who the Habs draft, because a lot of people want Zadina, but there's also been not rumors, but the Habs' recent history. They may not pick the best player available. They may pick someone like Quinn Hughes or Adam Boqvist or Brady Tkachuk. And I'm really not sure what the Habs are going to do with that draft pick. It's a good situation to have because when you draft Philip Zadina, you have a really good player, but he's not really. We're already stacked on the wings, but he's the best player. You can't pass up on a player like him. So it kind of makes me wonder if Mark Bergevin is going to go off the reservation, as Pierre McGuire said, and go for Brady Tkachuk, who played as a center in junior, but played as left wing in Boston University, or a left-handed defender in Adam Boqvist or Quinn Hughes.
Yeah. No, and the thing is we do need defensemen too, right? So, I mean, like I said earlier, I said that I think that I would be happy with any of those defensemen or Zadina. I mean, my number one choice, I think, is Zadina. But, I mean, I don't think Kotkaniemi is the guy in that spot. I don't.
No, yeah.
And
I agree with you.
I trust Trevor Timmins. I do. I think that he can – I think that if we put the cards in his table – I mean, it's so easy to look through 1,000 people's lists, right? And they got all these people ranked all like crazy. Listen, a lot of these kids, like you have – I think personally it's Dahlin in his own class.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have Svechnikov, Zadina. I don't even think that they're in their own class. I think you can put those defensemen up there with them. So, I mean, I just really think the only guy off the board here is probably Dahlin. I think he's the only guy in his own class. But after that, I think anybody else who's ranked pretty high in the top 5, I'll take those guys. Just don't go too far off the board. That's all. That's how I feel about it.
And in the interview that Trevor Timmins had, he said that there is a clear top 11 in the draft, and then he said then who knows where the draft is going. So it could get messy, like with a lot of people's predictions. People could be placed here, or there, but when the draft actually comes, it's going to be a lot different from what people predict, and it kind of relates to the Habs 2 4th or the 4 second-round picks if they decide to move up, because they may think a player could be available with their early second-rounders, but they could package 2 of those second-rounders and trade for a late first if needs be.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, like I said, they have they have lots of weapons. They have lots of tools. Trevor Timmons even said that. He said they got a lot. It's like they have the picks. Those 4 second-round picks, either you can fill the cupboards or you can use those to get a solid piece for the team or move up in the – you never know. It's very exciting. It's literally probably – well, it has to be one of the – I haven't been this excited for a draft in a really long time.
Yeah. And what would you do with those 4 second-round picks? If you're Marc Bergevin right now, what would you do with those 4 second-round?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm going to – at this point right now, I'm going to try everything. I'm going to flex. Everything. I'm going to flex out those picks. I'll flex out 2 of those picks. I will put some packages together. I'm calling all the teams. I'm looking for a partner for Shea Weber, Noah Hannafin, okay? And I'm looking for a center. If I can somehow package a player and those picks for the player that I want that fills that hole, I'm willing to part way with 1 or 2 of those picks. I mean, at this point, I think that any player of interest, he needs to talk to those teams. He needs to negotiate.
Yeah, that's true.
If I have the weapons that Marc Bergevin has right now, Max Pacioretty, you have some trade chips. This is a good time to just call around. You need to work those phones. They say, right? Doesn't everybody say that he's the busiest GM? He's the guy making all these phone calls. Well, let's finally prove that right, and let's make one of those phone calls work. I think that's what I would do, and hopefully that's what he's doing.
Yeah, I have a strong feeling that he's going to make a very big splash at the end of June because he's done a lot of trades during the draft with acquiring Andrew Shaw, trading Lars Eller. Right after the draft, he traded for Subban, and he also traded for Jonathan Drouin at the end of June. And the weird thing is that he traded Lars Eller, Andrew Shaw, and Jonathan Drouin, and all 3 of those players were RFAs. So it makes me wonder if Marc Bergevin will target another RFA and package 2 of those second-round picks.
Yeah, I mean, depending on if they want to re-sign him, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you have a list of our RFAs? Let me see.
On the top of my head, some players that are RFAs on cap-type teams is Tyler Johnson and
on other teams, you mean,
or just any team in general who have RFAs. But the big ones, in my opinion, are Tyler Johnson and Tomas Hertl.
Yeah, but I mean, these things, these offer sheets, we always pray for these offer sheets on these RFAs, or try and trade and get one of them. But I mean, I don't think he's going to take that route.
No,
I don't think he's going to take that route this year. I really don't. I feel like he's going to. I think he's shopping for that left defenseman and that center, probably more the center. But in my opinion, I think the more important piece is the left defenseman. That number 1 left defenseman to play with Shea Weber, I think, is a more important piece than the number 1 center.
Yeah. I agree with that. There are players like Noah Hannafin and Jonas Brodin, and those players have been mildly linked to Montreal, but you really don't know what Bergevin's going to do. No one expects, or all the insiders, they're good and all, but they're almost never right about what Marc Bergevin does. It's always the Habs Twitter account breaking the trades, and I really don't know what's going to happen in the next month. Anything could happen. Really.
Like he always says, expect the unexpected.
Yeah, that's true. Have you watched the Sportsnet documentary 24 Together?
I actually did, yeah.
What do you think about that? I thought it was pretty amazing.
Oh man,
documentary.
It's a great moment. I mean, it's so nice to relive all that, and also to see all the controversy tied up in that Stanley Cup win, and all the alleged blown calls or calls that were made, and I mean, it's just a great time. I mean, anytime there's anything about that '93 Stanley Cup, I'm always a huge fan of it. And I mean, at the end of the day, I wasn't that old when I was only like 4.5 years old, I think, when they won the cup. And but at the end of the day, I mean, through my whole childhood, I just always remember the Stanley Cup pictures, the Patrick Waugh posters, it's just everything around my house. And I feel like that Stanley Cup win, I think, was a huge reason why I became a Habs fan, especially my parents. I mean, coming here as immigrants and stuff, they clinged to, they didn't know what hockey was. We're from an island in Portugal, they don't know what hockey was. So they come here and they see this Montreal Canadiens team winning everything, And I guess they just clinged on to that, and that just kind of passed down to me. So anytime you see something like a '93, anything about that Stanley Cup, I mean, it's just amazing. It's awesome. It almost brings tears to your eyes. Just it's just an amazing time.
True. That they were truly a team of destiny. Everything was laid out perfectly.
Yeah.
They had 10 OT wins. They were playing against the easier teams, like when they won against the Nordiques. The next, they'd play the winner of Boston and Buffalo, and Boston was the far superior team, but they played against Buffalo. They swept Buffalo, and then they made it to the conference finals, and then they played the winner of New York Islanders and Penguins, and the Penguins were coming off of 2 straight Stanley Cups, and they had Mario Lemieux in his prime and all of that, but the Islanders somehow won, and then the Canadiens beat the Islanders in the conference final, and then they had more luck. I wouldn't say luck, it's more like a team full of destiny with Marty McSorley, the stick penalty that led to a game-tying goal. Really, it was just awesome, because I wasn't there to watch. I wasn't there to witness all that, but the documentary did a fantastic job of displaying all of that for people who may not have been alive to watch the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think for any Montreal Canadiens fans, even if you were not alive during that time, I think it's an amazing thing to watch and just to see how it was. And I mean, that's something to strive for. That's the kind of that's what we want, man. That's what we want to build again. We want to build that team of destiny. And another thing, like I grew up. I'm Toronto. I'm from Toronto, so I mean, I know a lot of Leaf fans, and a lot of Leaf fans claim to this day that if they didn't get robbed, and if the Kings didn't make the finals, that the Leafs would have won that cup that year. But I tell everybody how it is. Nobody was taking the cup from Montreal that year. Nobody,
especially with Waugh and everything that was
all those overtime wins. That was insane. Like, that was just incredible. He would, and they knew. They're like, Patrick is not letting anything in, and they knew they could just play, and that was amazing.
Yeah, in the documentary, they said that Waugh said, "Go on, just play because I'm going to save all the shots." He kind of had that cockiness that really got a lot of people. Like, they made people worried, but inside, Waugh knew that he was going to stop every puck that went by him. And watching that documentary, it makes me want the Habs to win the cup even more, and it makes me slightly jealous that the Golden Knights, in their inaugural season, they're in their first Stanley Cup final, and I have yet to see the Canadiens make the Stanley Cup.
We were close the year of Halak, and then we ran into those Flyers, those Philadelphia Flyers. Man, that was, and Michael Layton. Oh, that's haunting. But yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, Robert, I'm pretty confident that we'll be back there soon. And I don't want to sound like a biased Habs fan, but I think that we'll be back there soon.
Hopefully, I hope you're right. I just want to see them win so badly, especially from watching that documentary and everything that's happened, where it's a quarter of a century with no Canadian team winning the cup. Wouldn't it just be awesome seeing the Canadiens win the cup?
100%.
Cool.
That's what we all want.
Yeah.
I'll retire from podcasting. I'll retire from podcasting if we win the cup. You heard it here first.
Oh yeah. We heard it here on the Have Some Fun
Yes, you
podcast.
did. Lewis says he will retire. Gibby will have to go solo.
Oh, gonna leave him behind? Oh.
Well, I'm not gonna make a decision for him.
All right. So thank you for being on the podcast. Is there any way people could find you on social media?
Yeah, of course. I control the at HabAListen Twitter page. So yeah, you can follow me there. You can catch our podcasts at allhabs.net. I also post them on the Twitter page. And also we're starting a YouTube channel. So it'll be at HabAListen YouTube. We're going to be recording our first video this week. We're going to have a lot of funny videos, skits, stuff like that. And that'll also be available at the All Habs website, and I'll post the links on Twitter. So yeah, should be a fun summer, should be a fun draft, and I'm just excited for the future.
All right, awesome. Thank you for being here, and hopefully we can talk soon.
Yeah, no problem, Rob. It was a pleasure, and keep doing it, man. I enjoyed the first one, and then keep growing.
Thanks. I'm trying.